at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Partner Chat. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is replacing Zenith, 5 reasons to upgrade legacy BDRs. Today we are joined by Matt Orr, Director of Operations at Proactive Networks. Before we go through the agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also make copies of the slides available to those who registered for the event. With over 160 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it to your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout today's presentation. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit them as we go along, and we will try to address your questions on the fly. Today's presentation follows a logical flow. Matt will be going over the legacy BDR problem that his company faced, how his company approached that challenge, and how they have successfully upgraded 60% of their clients to date. Matt will then go over 5 reasons to upgrade legacy BDRs. Now let me introduce Matt. Matt Orr has served in IT management and business technology consulting roles since 1996 with organizations including Lexus and Christie's. He's a 10-year veteran of flat-fee, all-inclusive managed services and was an early adopter of hardware as a service, embracing the utility computing model 6 years ago. Matt trains his team to understand that the focus of an MSP should not be supporting technology, but rather supporting people. Matt, thanks a lot for joining us, and welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. I'm glad to be here and happy to share our experience. So Proactive Networks has been around since 1995. We serve primarily the small to medium business market here in Pasadena, as well as Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. Ultimately, we will serve clients anywhere from the Southern California area, but try to focus on those that we can reach in a very quick drive. We've grown slowly over the years to about 12 employees, and we're looking at actually doubling that hopefully here in the next year, year and a half. And currently we have about 40 managed services clients where we are the primary IT provider for them, and we maintain about 10 to 15 other clients that we're slowly transitioning out of break-fix and bringing them over to managed services as well. So we have a pretty good handle on the market in our area and have a great deal of experience here with our team in providing a lot of these types of services, including BDR. So we found ourselves with a challenge when I started about 3 years ago with the organization, in that we were finding that we were moving from Zenith and looking for other options in terms of what we could provide with BDRs, and went through kind of a testing of the water, if you will, with different vendors. So during that time, not only did we have Zenith, but we brought in a couple other vendors, including eFolder, to try to find out what it was that we were looking for, both in a solution and an appliance, as well as in what we wanted to find with a partner. What we ended up with was kind of a mix of different BDRs. We were happy with eFolder, but we were trying to find the right price point. We were trying to find what we liked with other vendors and what they provided, and how we could have that actually work for us in the end. But it created a mess. So we'll kind of go into a little bit later what we've learned from that. But we find that we have a couple BDR problems when we look at what we've gone through. Looks like I accidentally advanced one too many. I apologize. So what we found is that BDRs ultimately pale in comparison to new servers. When we're looking at what we're putting out in the market with our new clients, and in terms of servers, we're building nice, robust servers to meet their needs, but the BDRs that are backing those up and ultimately are there in case of a disaster oftentimes don't match the same processing power that those servers have. So what we're doing is we're putting in disaster recovery scenarios that really cannot support the servers that they're there to back up. We're also finding that the BDRs that we have run out of storage. So clients more and more demand that we back up more, we retain it for longer. They don't want to get rid of their historical data. They want very specific retention policies, and we need to be able to support that. And what they're desiring and what they're demanding is based on today's standards. They're asking for it on equipment that was based on standards from 2, 3, 4 years ago, and we just can't keep up. Also, we have the dissimilar hardware. So we need to make sure that moving forward, we avoid the problems we've had in the past, where we are looking to track data, collect data from different BDR vendors, and that just puts a huge strain on our team to just keep and collect that data. Also, there's some concern about what are happening with some of these vendors. So in terms of Zenith, they've gone through quite a bit of a transition, and we want to make sure that we have the support moving forward that we need. So as we look to how we're going to resolve this, first of all, we make BDR a requirement. What we have found with our clients is that they expect us to be there when they're in need. Sometimes that's with minor support issues, and in cases of when we utilize BDRs, it can be in a disaster recovery standpoint as well. And that's not the time to find out that there is an issue. So by making BDR a requirement, that means that we can stand behind our backup solution and know that it's going to be there. At the end of the day, a lot of clients prefer to tell us what they want, or they make their decisions based off of price. And the only person that we're actually hurting by doing that is ourselves. Because regardless of what their decision is, when things go south, they look to us to be the ones to fix them. And if we haven't put them in the right vehicle to be able to recover their data and do so in a fast manner, it's our team that's scrambling and our team that's having to jump through hoops to make it happen. At the end of the day, all the client's doing is sitting and waiting for us to do it. So it's in our best interest, as well as the clients, to make sure that we have set them up with the right solution in advance. And BDR is how we've chosen to do that. We also own the equipment. So rather than making it a sales conversation every time we need to put a new BDR out there, we avoid that altogether by not having the clients themselves own the equipment. What we offer for them is a flat monthly service, and then for that service, we provide a BDR appliance. That means that now we're in control of the relationship in terms of when we want to upgrade or when we want to replace, we're not asking permission because we're not doing anything to their hardware. Again, our service and our solution that we're providing is the peace of mind in knowing that their equipment and their servers are backed up, and how we do that and how we maintain that is then left to us to manage, as we're the experts. And we charge for that as a flat monthly service. We're able to get a significant markup on storage. And because we can do that, we need to be ourselves willing to be flexible and negotiate with the clients when it makes sense. So of course, we're in it to ultimately make a profit. We want to succeed well in how we are offering those products to our clients. But again, at the end of the day, we're not supporting technology. We're supporting the client. And so we need to do what's in the best interest of the client. And then we're looking at a much longer relationship as opposed to just an immediate sale or an immediate markup on product. So we make sure that ultimately we want them to say yes. We want them to be happy with the product. And if being flexible and coming down on the pricing for storage helps us do that, then that's a tool that we have. And as we're looking at getting these links,
Matt, can I ask just a quick question? I mean, tell me a little bit about what that conversation looks like when and if there are objections from a client to making an investment in BDR. I mean, how do you handle? I mean, what are some of the things that a client may say as an objection, and how do you guys handle those types of questions?
We found two primary objections. One is, actually both of them generally go around cost, but one is the cost of the BDR itself, and then the other is, well, maybe we can save by not offsiting this data and just keep it local. So to counter the objection to having a BDR in that investment, it's fairly a simple practice of sitting down and calculating, okay, Mr. Client, what are you paying for your staff to be here every hour? And once we can calculate that, we can look at the cost of what downtime is. And I've never come across a scenario where it's cheaper to have employees sitting around waiting than it is to invest what is then a minimal cost into an appliance that will keep them up and running. So when it's on a comparison basis like that, generally an hour or 2 hours of downtime easily is more than the cost of a BDR each month. So that takes that objection away. Also, it's when they're realizing that it's not just a matter of backup. A lot of people can sell backup and find backup solutions on the internet, and there's Carbonite and Mozy, and so clients tend to think that backup is a very simple, easy thing. What they're not aware of is the way that things are recovered, the level to which data is backed up, and then the recovery piece in terms of the business continuity, getting a server back up and running and not just recovering data. So educating the client, making sure that they're aware of what it is that the BDR actually does in comparison to file backup services has become huge. And then we've, to encourage clients to make sure they're also replicating their data offsite, we went from 2 line items, one being a BDR appliance and the second line item being the cost of offsite storage. We've taken those and we've turned it into 1 line item. So we found that if we break it up, then we're inviting the clients to do the same. And if we allow them to say, you know what, I want the appliance, but I don't want the offsite storage, again, that puts us in a position because we can't deliver on the commitments that we want to in the case of a full outage or a failure of the BDR itself. So we started bundling our storage and providing a set bundle in with the appliances so that we're already encouraging them to back up offsite. Of course, we include that cost with what we pass on to the client, but we're no longer itemizing it out. If they need additional storage above and beyond, then they can purchase extra storage, but that is no longer an option when it comes to sending at least some of it offsite. So that's removed both of those arguments from our clients, and we find it's a much easier sell.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about what your clients look like? I mean, are you guys focused on any particular verticals, or is there a typical kind of size of your client?
So our sweet spot is anywhere from 10 users up to about 150. We are primarily in the insurance and financial services market, although more and more we're finding ourselves moving into private schools, we're moving into property management, and we'll take on any client in any vertical so long as they meet our criteria. What we're more focused on is their operational maturity themselves as a client. We don't want to bring on clients that aren't concerned about backup. We don't want to bring on clients that don't want to make the investment in new infrastructure as it's necessary, because then all we're doing is setting ourselves up for challenges and arguments later on. So we look for those clients that fit what our priorities are, and then we know it's a good match moving forward.
Great, great.
So, and then the last point on the slide, we decided to standardize on eFolder. So the biggest thing that we found is if we're going to streamline our service offerings and provide something that we can support consistently, we need to make sure that we're not spreading ourselves thin across multiple vendors. Anytime that you standardize on one vendor, you find you get better relationships, you get better discounts, and better opportunities when they arise. So what we found is we've actually been very successful in our process. All of our clients, of the 40 managed service clients that we have, 35 of them have BDRs. Those that don't are generally those that are doing more and more off-site and have less in terms of servers on-site, or they're clients that we've had for some time and have just never moved them because the initiative to start migrating to BDRs started after we brought them on as a client. So for them, it's a little bit more of a sell. Beyond those 40, we have 10 other clients who are strictly BDR service. We don't do anything for them in terms of IT support, but they're coming to us for their backup needs. Of all the BDRs out there that we would consider legacy, we've been able to upgrade about 60% of them. And we've had to spread that cost out over time because we do, in fact, take the investment of the equipment up front. And then we will amortize that ourselves over about 6 to 10 months. And again, like I've said before, we decided that we're going to standardize on eFolder, and we're also standardizing on ShadowProtect. And what that does is it means that all of our engineers know the product, they know how to recover from the product, and it takes away the additional learning and support curve. With offsite storage, we've been very profitable in making margins on the markups. We've been marking that up about 80 to 90%. And to make it easier on ourselves, we sell it in storage blocks of 50 gigs. That does a couple things. For one, on our accounting side, it makes it a lot easier to have bills that go out that are more flat in nature. We don't have different priced bills every month. So it's easier on accounting, and the clients love that a lot more because it makes them more predictable. And with flat fee managed services, we're all about having those predictable invoices. When we were charging by the gig, we would find that even though it would be small fluctuations, the bill would be a little bit different every month. What happens when we sell it in blocks is that we find that not only does it flatten it out, but we're actually more profitable, because when you move from 90 gigs to 99 gigs, you're at the same price. You do make a change when you move from 99 to 100, but at 100 gigs, you're actually charging now for 150, or I should say at 101, you're charging for 150. So we're able to oversell, and we make additional profit all the way up until they reach 150, and then they get a new block. And so it kept us ahead of the game, and it kept the client's bills flat. So that has had a great result for both us and the clients.
So Matt, a couple questions have come in just around. I mean, so what is that? I mean, are you at liberty to discuss kind of like you know, what you roughly charge for the 50 gigs of offsite?
So for
or how does it
gigs,
work? How does it work out? I mean, you talked earlier in the discussion about how you have a single line item, and you don't discretely have a difference between offsite and the BDR appliance. How does it work? I mean, is there a standard fee plus you pay for storage on top, or how does it work in a little more detail?
So with the eFolder platform, we automatically get 150 gigs, and that's one of the reasons that we liked going with eFolder. And so what we do is we bundle that in and sell that with the appliance. So as we provide an appliance, our entry level will include 150 gigs to a client. That's already encouraging them to offsite what could be a server or two servers, depending on how those servers are created. As we move up the line in what the BDRs are capable of, we also start including more and more storage. We build that cost into the appliance itself, so that as we're passing it on to them, we've already paid for the data that we're including. And then if they want to expand past that, then we'll sell it in blocks of 50. And we sell those for about $35 a piece. So that gives us a nice markup on what we're paying for that storage. And again, we're also overselling it. So we're selling potentially more data than they're actually using because they're paying in the blocks.
Gotcha. And then the cost of the appliance, I mean, you're getting this service income stream, and then you're paying for the appliances on your own books, and you guys have invested and own the appliance, and then your break-even point on that is anywhere from 6 to 10 months?
That's correct. We look to generally try to make it back in 9 months, and depending on where we want to be competitive with the client, we'll extend that a little bit sometimes, depending on the size of the client. We find the larger the client is, the more that we can charge per month, and then sometimes we can recover that in less time, in about 6 months. But the beauty of trying to amortize it that way is that, for one, after a short period of time, we own the hardware. That means that if we want to move that hardware to another client, if an agreement were to cancel, we can do that and keep making the profit there. And then everything after that initial investment, with the exception of what we continue to pay for the offsite storage, that's pure profit to us. So that allows us to support it, and it allows us to have a nice, steady income stream that requires very low maintenance and management.
So you'll actually repurpose, I mean, in certain cases, if you have a client that, like, if you need to forklift out an appliance and put in something larger, you'll actually repurpose the hardware because you own it on your own books.
Absolutely. So if a client ever expands past what we've given them initially, we can take that initial appliance, we can wipe out the client data, and then go put it at another location. And there's very little conversation that has to go along with that, because at the end of the day, we own the appliance. It's ours. The client's not concerned with specs. They're not concerned with storage capacity, because that's a sales conversation, and we don't have those. We have conversations about the solution that we're offering is going to back this up for you. It's going to keep this safe. It's going to allow this type of recovery, and it's not about hardware specs.
Great. Good.
So there's ultimately 5 reasons that we found that we apply when we're upgrading legacy BDRs. The first is that we want to improve the recovery time and the guarantees that we provide the clients. So like we've had conversations with our clients, they need to guard against any and every type of downtime. Where we've found BDRs to be a huge success lately is with CryptoLocker. And in many other forms of backup, CryptoLocker has the capability to jump onto servers across the network, and it can actually encrypt the backup data as well. So your backup's no good to you if you can't get to it. The way that we've been able to set up and deploy BDRs, it's prevented against disaster in those types of scenarios, and has been one more selling point. That's very much a hot button and very hot conversation now. So we let our clients know that that's what we're trying to do. But we need to meet specific recovery time objectives. We need to have them up and running in minutes. And where we've had challenges in the past, especially with some of these legacy BDRs, is it's very easy to just trust what's out there. And so if we've had a device out and it's been out for 2-3 years, it's easy to become complacent and just assume it's going to work. And if you're not performing test recovery, if you're not making sure that the data is exactly how you need it to be, and if you're not making sure that the appliance is still up to speed, you're learning that on the fly at the wrong time. We ourselves have had scenarios where a client has had an outage, and we've gone to recover a server, and what we expect to be a 30-minute to an hour recovery, we have seen last anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And having 3 years prior sold them this service, and we've told them, you know what, we'll have you up very quick. Here's what it can do for you. At the end of the day, we're still getting them up, but they have that hours and hours of downtime. They're happy that their server's back up. They're happy that their data's not lost, but they've lost a day's worth of productivity. And if our focus is on keeping our clients productive, we failed. So we need to make sure that we can accurately predict what it's going to take to get a client up and running in the event of an outage, and we simply can't do that with old hardware. Also, by refreshing and putting in new appliances every 3 years, what it's doing is it's giving us an opportunity to get back in front of the client and have that conversation with them about why they have the BDR in the first place. Again, if you keep invoicing for something and not discussing, here's why we have it, here's the benefits it gives you, when they find the need to look at their budget and look at what their expenses are and say, where can we cut back? If they've forgotten the value in the BDR, it's very easy for them to say, you know what, we don't need this type of backup anymore. And the time to reconvince them that they do need it isn't when they're looking to get rid of it, because then it does sound like you're coming back and trying to sell them on something. So what we do is make sure that it's a practice in making sure that regardless of what the profit is to us, we are doing the right thing for the client. And so rather than sitting back on a piece of hardware that we can continue making money on, it's the self-discipline to say, you know what, at this point it's in the best interest of the client for us to make another investment in hardware, pull out their old BDR and put in a new one. And that puts them in a good position, and because we've done right for the client, it puts us in a great position for the next 3 years. We get the opportunity to sit down with the client, rediscuss all the benefits of a BDR, convince them of the need for it, and now we're all on the same page. We're not having clients kind of jump off board because they've forgotten what they have and why.
So Matt, a question for you. Andy wants to know what brand of appliances do you use?
So what we've done is standardize all on eFolder. There are some cases where with larger clients we do some custom builds in terms of the hardware, but the entire back end in terms of the licensing, the support, the offsite data, that we all do with eFolder. And what that's allowed us to do is have kind of a one-stop place where all of our team knows to get information. We have one single place that we can go to monitor and manage these BDRs. And then when we need escalations and additional support later on, we've got a team at eFolder that we've become close with, that know what our goals are, and we work really well together.
Right. I guess one thing I want to clarify for the audience is that you guys have standardized on the entire eFolder stack and are using eFolder supplied BDR appliances in addition to the cloud services and software we supply you. But it is important to know that partners, you do have a choice, and that's one of the things that makes eFolder unique, is that we do allow partners to what we call kind of build your own BDR, where you can use any brand of off-the-shelf Windows server. You know, if you're standardized on HP or Dell or something, that's important to you to use that brand of hardware, that's your choice. And that's one of the hallmarks of our approach, is we want to give partners the choice of whether sourcing the appliances from eFolder or you can build your own. But in your case, Matt, you guys are primarily using eFolder supplied hardware.
That's correct. And we'll, the other nice thing with the eFolder hardware is we can customize it. So we kind of take what eFolder provides and we'll take it one step further. So sometimes we'll throw in an extra hard drive dedicated just for recovery. And so even with the base models, we'll get the base model and we'll put in a single terabyte drive. And that's dedicated space just for when we need to recover an appliance, which means we never find ourselves running into a situation where we have, say, 2 terabytes of storage capacity. We've backed up nearly 2 terabytes worth of data, and now we go to recover, and we don't have the space to recover to. So again, it's just another safety that we put in, and it gives us that additional performance and additional storage. So you can customize and build out the eFolder appliances as you need to, and in the few scenarios we've needed to, we've been able to build our own and still get the same level of support through eFolder. So as we look at the second reason for approaching what we have, we find that we want to avoid risking obsolescence. The most recent situation that we had was specifically with Zenith. And we learned that Zenith, for whatever their business practices were, decided that they were no longer going to support their 32-bit appliances. Zenith had been our largest standard prior to 3 years ago. So the vast majority of our devices out there were all based on Zenith. And we received notification toward the end of last year that they were going to no longer support 32-bit appliances. And what ended up happening is that as of their cutoff date, any 32-bit appliance that was out there, they kind of washed their hands of and said, okay, this is no longer our issue. So it stopped reporting into their portal, it stopped doing offsite backups, and we were left on our own to support those. Now, again, those are devices that we would want to and are in the process of cycling out anyway with new BDRs. But it put us in a position where we had to do it on their time frame and not on our time frame. And we were left with some clients kind of scrambling to get them up and ready and get new appliances out there. So in the future, we want to make sure that we're not doing that. We don't ever want to be in a position where we have a vendor kind of tying our hands and saying, you have to do this by this date, or your clients are going to be in jeopardy. So one of the great things with eFolder is because it is so flexible, we won't ever find ourselves in the position where they're going to say, you know what, we're not going to support this. So we can move forward with what we need. Also, a lot of those BDR appliances out there are based on Windows Server 2003 technology. And we all know that, in a couple months here, Microsoft's no longer going to be supporting Server 2003. So we don't want to be relying on a platform that is not going to be supported by the manufacturer of that platform. So we just make sure that we stay up to date. And again, it's worth the continued investment every 3-4 years in new equipment to make sure that we have that equipment that is not obsolete. And again, as you move forward to new BDRs, the pricing changes. So the cost of storage continues to go down, and we're finding that we're able to get much more for our dollar on a new BDR than what we would have gotten 3-4 years ago. So it makes sense to continue moving into that new technology for that reason. Also, another reason that we found that we've had challenges overcoming, and this has helped us as we move forward, is access to new software and features. So if we stay on the old equipment, we're staying with the old features. And ShadowProtect and other backup software companies are finding new ways of getting clients up faster and quicker with more reliable results. And if we're not making the investment to upgrade, we're losing out on those opportunities. One of the biggest opportunities we found with the new versions of ShadowProtect is the technology Head Start Restore. For those of you that are unfamiliar with what that does, rather than having to, during a disaster recovery scenario, go from scratch and spin up a virtualized machine, this keeps a virtualized machine kind of on standby for you. So I can have a VM ready to go, accurate as of yesterday, if that's what our settings are. So that in a recovery environment, all I have to do is then bring it up to date one day, and it's ready to be launched into the client's environment. That saves us easily minutes upon minutes, if not hours, in terms of recovery time. So when a client has an outage, it's nice being able to get them up and running in 15 minutes, as opposed to having to wait an hour or 2 hours, even on a new BDR, for this process to complete. So you lose out on those types of things if you just allow your BDRs to age. Also, again, storage comes way down. And both in terms of what is included with our program at eFolder, we're getting that 150 gigs included in our appliances that we get from them. And also just the cost of storage by itself, it's come way down in recent years. But like you find with, say, your home ISP would be a great example. You could be paying $35 a month for a certain level of bandwidth. And unless you call and ask them, hey, what can I get now, today, for $35? A lot of times they don't reach out and tell you that you can get more. So they're happy keeping you at old pricing because they're getting more for it. The same thing can happen with BDRs. If you're with old BDR vendors, old appliances, you're most likely on an old pricing plan. And you can get so much more today for the same dollar. So by having us work with eFolder, where we're consistently putting all of our storage in the same place, not only is it consolidating everything, but we're getting that volume discount, and that price keeps coming down. So the gig that we sold a client a year ago is actually worth more to us now because of the volume and because we're standardizing with one place. So we used to average about 35 cents a gig. We're finding now that we're paying only 20 cents a gig, and our cost to the client hasn't changed a whole lot. We still sell it across to the same. That just means more of a margin for us. And then finally, our fifth reason that we found that we just keep cycling out these BDRs with clients is the purpose of practicing what we preach. So we're very big on hardware as a service. We're very big on supporting clients the best that we can. And so we tell them all the time that they need to make sure they're on supportable hardware. We don't want to be supporting workstations that are over 3 years old. We don't want to be supporting servers that are over 4 to 5 years old. And we can't have that conversation with the client and have them take us seriously if we're not willing to do the same thing ourselves. I can't have a client out there where I tell them, you know what, your servers, they're about 3, 4 years old. We really need to start talking about getting some new equipment in here. And then, sitting next to their equipment is a 5-year-old BDR. I'm asking them to do something that we ourselves aren't willing to do. So we need to set the expectation that every so often you do need to get new equipment in here. So with the client, we tell them, by signing an agreement with us for a backup and disaster recovery appliance, you know that every 3 years you're going to get a hardware refresh. We are kind of setting that example and setting that standard up front at the very, very beginning so that they know in 3 years they can expect new equipment. And if we start practicing that and they start seeing that from us, it's very easy to get them to follow suit with their own hardware. So when we come to them and say, hey, we just swapped out your BDR appliance, you're now on the latest, greatest hardware, we know that we can support you for another 3 years. And by the way, Mr. Client, I noticed that this server that you have as well is getting up there in age. We need to discuss what your plans are for migrating that out. And it becomes a seamless conversation, and we've already set the stage. And again, because we're not having to sell them a new BDR every 3 years, because it is a monthly service, there's no challenge in us putting new equipment in there. We've already budgeted for it, we've already planned it, and it gives us now 3 more years of longevity on that service with them.
So Matt, great. So those are the kind of the top 5 reasons. And what I want to do before we open the floor for additional questions, I just want to remind everybody, please keep submitting your questions. But I just want to kind of conclude with a couple just informational final topics. So in our view, if you have legacy BDRs in the field, no matter the brand, right, you've got a couple different choices. Number one, you can do nothing, of course, right? That's obviously probably not the right choice if some of these appliances and locations are getting long on the tooth and are, say, north of 3 years old. You of course, you can follow the example that Proactive Networks has followed, which is to do forklift upgrades in those locations. And in those situations, eFolder does have an upgrade program called the eFolder BDR upgrade program. I'll talk about what that involves. It basically gives you a fairly significant discount on the hardware if you source a new eFolder BDR appliance through eFolder. And then the other option you have is to kind of buy time. If you have a Zenith or a Datto appliance out there and you want to send the offsites, leave that appliance in until you kind of negotiate with the client and get them migrated and have that business conversation, you can use what we call the eFolder BDR Rescue Program. And the BDR Rescue Program basically allows you to send, say, a legacy Zenith BDR appliance. You're able to send the images offsite to the eFolder cloud on a temporary basis at a deeply reduced price. And then that gives you buys you some time to figure out the migration plan. And alternatively, if you have an appliance that's viable, you can also repurpose in some cases that hardware and use it with the eFolder service portfolio. So a couple different choices you have. I just want to make sure everybody kind of understands how we price and package eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect. There's basically 3 different components. You have the cost of the appliance. The appliances that Proactive Networks is using, they range in price from $1,750 up to north of $8,000. There's 5 different models to choose from, and the price, of course, is driven by how much storage and how much RAM and how much capacity a particular appliance can do and how many machines it can virtualize. And again, you can source the appliances directly from eFolder, or you can build your own. And then you also can source the ShadowProtect software licenses directly from eFolder. Most partners do it this way, and most partners use the MSP licensing version, which is $20 per server per month. And then the service component, as Matt noted earlier, includes 150 gigs of offsite storage and is $40 per location or per appliance per month, wholesale to your organization. And then any additional storage above 150 gigs is priced at either 29 cents all the way down to 20 cents a gig based upon your total usage. Now, what's really nice is as you grow in your relationship with eFolder, all of your storage, that 150 gigs per location or per client, is actually aggregated into a logical pool for your partner organization. And so you're able to balance the smaller accounts with the larger accounts and not even get into that overage until you exceed that total combined pooled capacity. Just a quick couple comments on those 2 upgrade programs I mentioned. The eFolder BDR Rescue Program, this is basically designed for where you have a legacy BDR in place and you just want to have a safer place to put those offsite images for the time being as you plan the migration. It's very aggressively priced. It's only 15 cents a gig, and it allows you to simply offsite that data to the eFolder storage cloud for the time being as you plan the migration. And what we see with a lot of partners is you'll see, as we introduce this program, what you would see is partners would take 20 BDRs and leverage the rescue program, and so you'd see that kind of rate plan spike for that partner, and then over time it would bleed off as partners would then go through and do the actual forklift upgrades over a multi-month schedule. Now, when and if you go and do a forklift upgrade for a client, you would use the BDR upgrade program, and what we provide is if you take a legacy BDR and you ship it into us after you decommission it, we'll give you $1,000 off the new BDR appliance. We supply free inbound shipping. We responsibly recycle the appliance, and you can use this program with eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect or eFolder BDR for Aperture. So we support 2 different flavors of BDR service offering. And just to kind of conclude before we go into final Q&A, our goal as a company is to help our partners adapt and deliver hybrid cloud services to your clients and differentiate your own service offerings. So that I think we heard in today's webinar, you're able to build your own appliances, you're able to price and package the offering how you want, you're able to resell the appliance to the client or keep it on your own books like Proactive Networks is doing. You're able to put your own name on it, and we really allow you to go out there and differentiate and deliver a service that is your own. And if you do all these things, it gives you an opportunity to drive really predictable monthly recurring revenue and profitable revenue that delivers you a lot of cash flow and helps your organization thrive. So with that, why don't I turn our attention to our Q&A log here and see if we can, okay, so there's a couple questions from Perry on the UK. So Perry says, we're in the UK, can we get an eFolder BDR appliance? and if we're in the UK, can we recover in the UK? So Perry, currently today, eFolder does not ship our brand of appliances to the UK, and we haven't yet opened a UK data center, but we do have plans to do so. We just expanded into Canada, so international expansion is definitely one of our top agendas right now, and the Canadian data center is now open, so Canadian partners can store Canadian business data in a Canadian data center, and we have similar plans for the UK coming up. So Troy wants to know, Matt, are you asking clients to sign up for a new 3-year term when you're replacing the BDR with a new one?
We used to go based off of a term, but what we found, again, is we like our agreements to be evergreen. We don't like a client ever feeling like they're stuck with us. So if we're doing our job right, if we're servicing them well, they're going to stay with us because they want to be with us. And so all of our managed services agreements are based off of, and there's an initial, say, 3 or 6 month commitment during the ramp up. But then after that, we keep it month to month and evergreen. We do the same thing with BDRs now. We used to have them commit to a 3-year term, and then we found that it didn't make a lot of sense to do it, because if we're planning either way on purchasing these BDRs or amortizing them, I should say, over a 6 to 10 month period, we've already committed ourselves to owning these. At that point, it doesn't matter where we put these, and these have been such a great tool for us that there's never a shortage of where we can put a BDR. So the need to lock clients into a commitment, it never became a large issue. We actually started pulling that away. It made the sales process easier because we didn't have to say, you know what, you're stuck with this if you don't like it. And again, this is something that we can reuse, client to client if we needed to over the course of 3 or 4 years. So no, we don't need to do that.
Right, and I think the other comment I would make is that renewals selling is one of the most painful experiences I think a lot of MSPs go through. I mean, when you do have term agreements, yes, it does give you some guarded downside on a revenue commitment from a client, but then you invariably need to go do a renewal sales process, and that's really not that pleasant of a conversation sometimes, and it's costly, right? So if you have things on an evergreen basis, you're earning their business every month, and it kind of culturally shifts you in a different kind of service mode, just to realize the client could leave you tomorrow if they wanted, or with a 30-day notice, and so you kind of behave differently. And that's how eFolder actually, on a wholesale basis, with a lot of our partners behaves, is that basically almost everything we deliver is on a month-to-month basis, on a wholesale basis. So if a partner decides we're not providing them good service, they can turn off services and leave. And it just kind of culturally puts you in a different frame of mind in terms of servicing your clients.
That's
so
right. To comment on that, it also, we found, triggers conversations that wouldn't happen otherwise. So if they know that there is a term expiring, we're actually inviting the clients to come and analyze and say, do we still want this? Whereas if it's month to month, that type of alert never really goes to them. If they're happy with it, they continue with it. We're not kind of inviting them to reanalyze whether or not they want it.
Okay, and then another question from Troy, kind of related to hardware and initial deployments. But he asks, are you charging labor to set up replacement BDRs, or are you just absorbing the cost?
Replacement BDRs we absorb the cost of, because for most of those environments, we already know what the client has. We know the look of the client. We know what we're backing up. It's very easy for us to jump in and put them in place. And because we can upgrade the ShadowProtect agents so easily because they're already installed, they're not, I know with the Zenith agents, we've sometimes had to jump through hoops to get them uninstalled and reinstall them, and there's several server reboots required. With the MSP licensing through ShadowProtect that we're getting from eFolder, it's kind of an in-place upgrade. So we can pull out the old one, put the new one in, and there's very little effort that we have to do to it. For new deployments where we've not been in with a client before, there is a fee that we charge, and we generally do that based off of what we know about the client, how many servers they have, and how we feel it is going to impact our team. If we think it's going to be an easy deployment, we'll charge less. If we know that it's going to cause several reboots over multiple servers, and it has to be done after hours, then we'll price that accordingly.
Okay, great. And then Mike wants to know, just can you talk a little bit? I mean, we've talked about where you're sourcing your BDR appliances from, but can you give kind of a thumbnail sketch of kind of what your typical model looks like? How much which model in the eFolder portfolio do you typically put out there for your clients?
It's the model that we use primarily is the 1120. It's kind of the baseline model, and that fits for the size of client that we have, the number of servers that they have. It fits most of our clients very, very well. But what we will do is we'll overspec them. So we'll kind of bump them up. So we'll take an 1120, and we will take the RAM up to, that comes with 8 gigs. We'll usually take that to 16 to 32 gigs. One of the biggest barriers that we have found historically with getting clients up fast is the amount of RAM that's available. And especially if you have to spin up multiple machines, you don't ever want to be caught with a lack of RAM. So we'll boost the RAM way up. RAM's cheap. We'll also take another hard drive. We'll throw a 1 terabyte drive in there for recovery purposes only. What that does, especially with the Head Start restores, it gives us a destination to have these Head Start restores actually living on without taking up space that we would otherwise use for backup storage. So it splits up backup and recovery and has done quite a bit for us. Those are the two areas where 9 times out of 10 we'll throw more resources into is RAM and storage, and both are relatively inexpensive.
Okay, great. And I just put the rate card. You have the thumbnail sketch of the hardware rate card there at the bottom. Got a couple of detailed pricing questions from Thomas and Joby. So let's address those real quick. So Thomas wants to know, on the BDR rescue program, do you get ShadowProtect 5? And the answer to that is no. Whatever ShadowProtect license, most of those installations for the BDR rescue program, let's see here, this program here at the top, most of these situations, you've already licensed the ShadowProtect software to actually image the servers. The thing you're trying to do is offsite the data to eFolder instead of to Zenith. And so there's no, it's just a knockdown, really affordable rate plan as kind of a rescue plan B for you for the time being, and that's why it's so cheap. It's only, and affordable in that particular situation. So it does not include the software. And then Joby wants to know, on this rate card I'm showing you, is the $575 per server a one-time fee? Is that a perpetual license? And the answer is yes. Most eFolder partners today are licensing ShadowProtect licenses on a monthly basis at $20 per server per month. That's how most of the partners are doing it. Now, you do have a choice. You can do a perpetual license, and that's in this row here. You have a choice of either doing perpetual or the monthly. So hopefully that answers that question. Kind of change gears dramatically here, but a little bit. But Matt, can you talk a little bit about, are you using any PSA integration? Or what PSA are you guys using, and do you use PSA integration with your BDR deployments?
So the answer is yes and no. We use ConnectWise ourselves, and BDR integration has been something that we have tried previously. The challenge that we had was that we were integrating with eFolder, we were integrating with Chartech, we were integrating with Datto, we were trying to do some integration with Zenith, and when you have that many vendors out there trying to integrate with the same type of information, there's inevitably some challenges that arise. So we have, for the time being, stopped. And so what we do is literally just plug in. There's 40 clients. It takes us maybe an hour a month to do it. So we have one of our people actually sit down and plug in what our usage is. I think the biggest benefit we get out of doing it manually is the fact that we have somebody specifically reviewing what is the current usage now compared to last month. And so while there's a little bit of extra labor cost that goes into it, we get a lot of value out of that as well, simply because we're aware of clients who have grown significantly in offsite storage over the last month. We have somebody putting eyes on that, and then we can have that conversation with the client before we invoice them and say, you know what, we noticed, you've grown 100 gigs in the last month, and so your invoice is going to reflect that because, of course, what you use is what you're charged. However, we want to make sure that that is in fact good data, that it should be growing like that. So if there's an opportunity that we can save you some money, Mr. Client, we're going to see if we can find that. And it puts us back in the seat of us looking out for the client. So that being said, we are looking at, once we have gotten the remaining legacy BDRs out, we'll be reinvestigating some integration again, but we would never want to lose that touch point that we have of monitoring the data growth.
Right. Can you talk a little bit, Bobby wants to know a little bit about your retention policies off-site. How do you determine how many months of monthly deltas you keep in the eFolder cloud?
At this point, our eFolder, we've only been with eFolder now for about 2.5 years, and we've maintained 2.5 years of monthlies in the cloud. That gets passed on to the client, and the client has never, we've never had an issue where they say, I'm not comfortable with this out there. We've had enough use case scenarios where clients have needed to go back, several years. We're talking about, need something from the middle of last year. And the peace of mind knowing that they have it in case they ever need it has always trumped what is otherwise a fairly nominal fee for keeping it. I'm sure now as we're approaching 3 years and looking at having some eFolders that get up to that age, we might need to start having that conversation with clients, but it's not come up yet.
Right. I mean, I think I think the good news here is that, again, it's a business decision. It's how granular do you want to be on your recovery points? How many recovery points do you want from a historical perspective? And do you have a rate plan and pricing program that gives you the maximum level of protection and the client can afford it? And that sounds like you guys have done so. And I think the important thing though is that if you do have clients where off-site storage costs are a concern, you can limit the how many monthly recovery points are stored in the eFolder cloud. So that feature is about a year old now on eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect, where you can actually configure how many monthly recovery points you actually will retain in the cloud at any one time. So you have the choice, you have the flexibility to decide that, and it's really driven by client requirements in most cases.
And I'm aware that too, a lot of people's business cases their models are different. Where we have kind of made sure that we've standardized is in making sure that we have that relationship with the clients, that they're trusting us to make the right decisions. And the biggest benefit we've seen out of that is it takes away a lot of the sales conversations about specifics. They're not interested in how much storage capacity is on the BDR. They're not interested in how much RAM the BDR has or what the retention policies are, because what the value that we bring to the clients is, if you need it, we're there for you. And we're going to put these tools in place that are going to enable us to deliver that. And the BDR is just one of those tools. And so they don't get much into the, well, I need this much retention offsite or I need this much storage, because they're trusting us to make those decisions for them.
Okay. Well, great. Just kind of a practical question. Michael wants to know, are we going to be sending around copies of the presentation? Yes, for everybody who attended in person. You'll be receiving copies of the slides. And with that, I don't think we've got any other questions. So, Matt, I want to thank you again for sharing some great insights on how you guys are running your BDR practice at Proactive Networks. So,
absolutely. I appreciate having the opportunity to share.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody, and thank you for joining today's eFolder Partner Chat. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.